Ottawa chapter of Greening Sacred Spaces has helped faith communities reducing their environmental footprint and aims to inspire them to be sustainable leaders within their community. So we help provide knowledge, tools, and support, such as these types of webinars, needed to help take that meaningful action with your community. So we believe that with working and building together, that we'll be able to create a more sustainable future for everyone. We do this through networking events. We have gardening programs. Currently, we have the energy benchmarking program, as well as other networking and other greening initiatives that we can help you with. And for those who are present tonight, I do want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time out of your evening to come and support this network and to support our speakers tonight, along with everyone that had given us the questions ahead of time for our discussion.
Thank you, Hannah. So as an intro to this evening, we are putting together a group application on behalf of faith communities in the Ottawa area for the Hydro Ottawa EV charger funding. So if you're here, you've likely heard this, but if not, I'll just say that Hydro Ottawa is offering to fund up to 50% of EV charger installations. So GSS Ottawa, we're taking letters from faith communities to essentially apply for that funding on your behalf. We received quite a lot of interest in the chargers and also quite a few questions with them. So that's why we wanted to put on this evening, so that we could bring the experts in and kind of get everything out in the open and just like hear all the information we need to. So if you haven't already put your introduction in the chat, I invite you to do so now. Just your name and where you're from, what community you represent. And I'd like to introduce our experts for this evening. So we have Steve from LightenCo, and we have Christopher Ralph from Lion Electric. They're going to be the ones answering your questions this evening. If you guys would like to just introduce your organizations, you can do so now if you'd like.
Yeah, sure. So I'll go ahead and then let Christopher, the real expert on EV charging, talk. But I'm Steve Hubbard. I think some of you probably were on a recent event that we had in person too, and on a Zoom with Greg Steves, who works with us as well, to talk about turnkey lighting retrofits for faith-based communities. And we work across Ottawa for the past 10 plus years to do a lot of lighting controls and electrical services and energy-based services for commercial, multi-residential, a few faith-based organizations over the years as well. And more recently, we've gotten into the EV charging area, and we're working with Christopher at Lion Electric, who already talked about himself a little bit there, and with the snow he's got, to help us roll those out to organizations like the ones you represent here today. So we're happy to help, and I'll turn it over to Christopher here.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Christopher Ralph. I am the manager of electric vehicle infrastructure at the Lion Electric Company, which is the largest manufacturer of heavy-duty electric vehicles in North America. We're based in Saint-Jérôme, Mirabel, and Terrebonne, Quebec, all the Montreal region, 100% Canadian owned and operated company. I've done EV charging for about 5 years. I used to work for Hydro Ottawa. I'm wearing a Hydro Ottawa sweater right now because it's freezing here, and I refuse to turn my heat on. And I've done thousands of electric vehicle chargers all over Canada and the United States, everything from some of the largest fleet deployments in North American history, all the way down to some of the simplest condo and apartment building installations in Ottawa, Gatineau, Victoria, Winnipeg, you name it. I've done all of it. I represent Lion Energy. Lion Energy is a division of the Lion Electric Company that has a partnership with LightenCo, where we do assessments for faith-based organizations, condos, apartment buildings, commercial, industrial, and institutional customers on how best to position themselves in the coming electrified economy. The environment is at the core of everything that we do. Environmental science and applied climate change policy are my backgrounds. And that's why I don't just sell electric vehicle charging. I fundamentally believe in it. I drive one myself. I have electric vehicle chargers in my garage. My wife has an electric vehicle and works in renewable energy. I won't recommend anything that I don't personally believe in. LightenEnergy is a value-added reseller of over 10 electric vehicle charger manufacturers. We do not sell junk, and we refuse to do so. Anything that you purchase from us or purchase from LightenCo, I guarantee you is coming from some of the top experts globally. I have on my staff electric vehicle experts who come from Tesla, who come from Rivian. We ourselves are market leaders, and we help people position themselves to make a difference. That means if you're purchasing an electric vehicle charger from us and you want to make revenue with it, or you want to do something good for the environment, that's what LightenEnergy exists to do. So with that in mind, I've taken all the questions that you have put forward, and I have Reader's Digest versions, and I have academic versions for anybody who wants to go really into detail on this kind of stuff. And I've done this so much that there's nothing I haven't seen before. I've installed plenty of EV chargers on churches, specifically in the Gatineau, Montreal, and Quebec City regions. So I know everything about how to install them and not lose your heritage designation, to how to make sure you paint spots to make sure that they're still accessible. Absolutely, Martin. I will make sure that Reader's Digest version is exactly what is given. So with that in mind, I'll turn it back over, and I'll let everybody else either make their own introductions or begin the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Christopher. We're really excited to have you. I think this is exactly, your background is exactly what people are looking for to answer these questions. I will get right into it, I think, because we have quite a number, and I don't want anyone to not have the chance to ask additional questions or follow-ups yet. So my first question is, how much money would our congregation need to put down upfront to establish an EV charging station?
Depends on what you want to do with it. So if you're willing to give electricity away for free because you fundamentally believe in the idea of electrified mobility, you can procure these for a good one that will not break on you after 7 months. You can procure a good one for as low as $900. You will not be able to maintain money on it. You will pay for any electricity consumed, and a lot of EV users can be gluttons. If a guy across the street knows he can charge there for free, he will charge you for it, which is fine if that's what you believe in. You believe in that. Any model where there is revenue or cost recovery typically begins at $3,000 and can go as high as $5,000, not including installation.
Great, thank you. Are there equivalent subsidies from Hydro One compared to the Hydro Ottawa funding that we have?
So I will state this right now. Hydro Ottawa is not offering any subsidies. The money does not come from Hydro Ottawa. They are not putting any money on the table. This is a subsidy being offered by a division of the federal government that is being administered by Hydro Ottawa inside the Ottawa service territory. You can apply to any site you please, and Hydro Ottawa will administer the application for you. That's what they're doing. Hydro Ottawa was not giving out their money back to anybody to install EV charging. Yes, you can apply anywhere in Canada. Anywhere in Canada, you can put down as the faith-based application on this one. There will, of course, be jurisdictional issues, just like there was in the Save on Energy program. Will Hydro Ottawa administer your application if you live in East Orleans, which is Hydro One service territory? Technically, Hydro Ottawa does have the right to apply, as does Lion. Lion has its own in-house subsidy and grants team that can do this as well. However, if Hydro Ottawa wants to carry that burden, it's a lot less work for my team. However, to answer your question, yes, there are no equivalent subsidies from Hydro One or Hydro Ottawa because the money is coming from the federal government. They're merely just applying on your behalf. But you can apply from anywhere in Canada.
Thank you. Is there a discount for multiple charging stations in one parking lot?
So Lion would be the one who would be selling the electric vehicle chargers here. And typically we do discount based on volume. Now there's two components to that. I buy electric vehicle chargers in bulk. I do massive projects. I have a YouTube video up where we're doing like 70 chargers in one spot, because I do fleets, right? So I have an inventory of chargers sitting around in a warehouse in Terrebonne, where I will provide exceptionally competitive pricing should you wish to proceed with the LightenCo partnership. Volume discounts typically don't tend to kick in until you're buying a considerable number of chargers. They do exist. So if the faith-based communities of Ottawa were to pool their resources and put together a single application as well as a single quotation, absolutely. Not just Lion, but anybody else out there could also provide volume-based discounts if that's what you were looking to do.
Great, thank you. One question, which is kind of roped in with a number of others, but are EV charging stations profitable, and how does the business aspect of this work? And then also incorporating, how do people know where your charger is located? How do they find it?
So I'll talk about what an EV charger is and how it works. First question, does anybody here have an electric vehicle? Just shout it out or put your hand up. Okay, I'm just going to assume nobody here does. Charging stations are both everywhere and nowhere. The city of Ottawa has roughly the same number of public charging stations as the city of Saint-Jérôme, Quebec, which is a city of 70,000 people, which makes sense. Over 55% of all Canadian electric vehicles are in Quebec. Although Ottawa rolls out about 580 to 620 electric vehicles per quarter, which is a considerable amount. Every electric vehicle has a dashboard and a GPS attached to it where it will direct you towards a public charging station. And anybody who has an electric vehicle also, I guarantee you, has an application installed on their smartphone that would direct them towards the current public charging stations. They either will pay on their phone, pay by credit card, or pay by a RFID card. If you have a Blink or a ChargePoint or a Flow or whatever, an EV charger that is publicly listed, it will appear on those applications. There are also public applications that are owned by EV charging companies, but tend to be technology agnostic, like PlugShare, although that is user submitted and can be just as detrimental as anything else. There are those chargers will then appear on that application, and people can feel free to charge at those locations. When you pull up to the charger, there will be an authentication request. You either put your phone up to the charger, tap your RFID card, or tap a credit card, and you can then plug that in to your electric vehicle and it will begin billing. You are billed as long as you are occupying the spot and are connected to the charger, which means even if your car is full, but you are still occupying the spot, you are still billed, even though there's no electricity being consumed. The idea behind that is to ensure that you will then vacate the spot to allow somebody else to charge. Keep in mind, in Ontario, it is a punishable offense under the Highway Traffic Act. What's it called in Ontario? Highway Traffic Act, I believe, to block an electric vehicle charging spot without charging. You can receive a ticket from bylaw for doing so. I believe the fine is $200 in Ontario. It's $310 in Quebec. Are they profitable? It depends on what your traffic is. I have installed public charging systems in very high traffic areas where there's tons of electric vehicles. Saint-Jérôme, Quebec, Terrebonne, Quebec, Longueuil, Quebec. Some parts of Ottawa get really high electric vehicle traffic. Place d'Orleans is a great example. Yes, they're very profitable in that case. You also have the ability to control your price on it. I typically recommend between $1 and $1.50 an hour. My car will fill up in about 2.5 hours. I have a Hyundai Ioniq. However, you can charge whatever you feel is appropriate. Cost recovery is typically what I state is recommended. They'll pay themselves off after a number of years, and then they become profitable. And profitability is typically assured, especially with the fact that the number of EVs doubles about every 11 months. Sorry for the long-winded answer, but trying to answer and hit all the points that were listed there.
No, I think that that's great. I think you answered a number of these questions. I guess a little bit of a follow-up to that. If you were to put in a charging station that was $10,000 and you receive the 50% funding, would you be able to give a ballpark of how long it would take to recoup your $5,000 investment?
I would need to understand where it's being located and what your general EV traffic is. Typically, Lion and LightenCo can offer that for a fee inside an assessment. Ottawa is a hit and miss market because of its size. So the way electric vehicles are tracked, it typically is based not on, it's an amalgamation of postal codes. So the entirety of the Ottawa urban metro area in Ontario is tracked. If it's a church in Carp, technically it's still in the Ottawa urban area, although the majority of electric vehicles are being purchased between Parliament Hill and Place d'Orleans, with Canada having a very significant majority, a very significant plurality as well. That church in Carp is going to be covered under the same statistical area as the rest of the city of Ottawa, but no one in Carp is driving anything other than a Ford F-150 or a Chevy Silverado, which are always on the side of the road during snowstorms. Neither here nor there. So giving an exact pinpoint without knowing your congregation or without it being in an apartment building where I can take a look at the actual population of vehicles that are inside that building, it's a very rough estimate for me. What I will say is quarterly, about 600 electric vehicles roll off the lot in Ottawa. The number increases every quarter by about 15%, doubling every 12 months-ish. Ottawa's a bit slower than the Quebec market, just due to the lack of subsidies. So the population of electric vehicles is growing considerably. So the market potential is there. But I can't give a precise date on when you would achieve profitability.
Okay, great, thank you. A question related more to the electric vehicle side, but what does it cost on average to charge a battery, and how long do these charges typically last?
I can actually show you. So we have two electric vehicles. My wife works for the Canadian Renewable Energy Association. I work, of course, for an electric vehicle company. We both have electric vehicles, and we have all the information stored on our phones. My last charging stations inside my garage on a Hyundai Ioniq, which we both have, were exactly 2 hours and 11 minutes, 2 hours, 5 minutes, 1 hour, 54 minutes. So about 2 hours each time. I roll in with about 25% battery life. I drive from Saint-Jérôme to Terrebonne every day and usually around Montreal for work. I do about 150 kilometers a day. In terms of what that costs me in electricity, if I were to go to my Ontario addresses from when I just moved, on a level 2 charger, it's about 70 cents for me to go from 0 to full, which, given the price of gas right now, is a pretty interesting statement to make. And I'd be happy to run cost estimates based on the current Hydro Ottawa billing factor for any electric vehicle out there. This is a Hyundai Ioniq, which only has 38.3 kilowatt hours of battery life. It's nearly double that in some of the larger Teslas. The Rivian RT1 is like 100 kilowatt hours. So I'd be happy to take a look at that for anybody who wants charge times or what it would cost, but it is exceptionally cheap to charge up an EV.
Great. Regarding EV charging installations, what sort of maintenance do EV chargers require, and what are the costs associated with those?
There's virtually no maintenance required on an EV charger, unless somebody hits it with their car. There's nothing. DC fast chargers will require the changing of their air filters and the replacement of their cooling fans every 6 months to 2 years, depending on their position and where they're located. However, a level 2 EV charger you can install and you can leave it there and it's never going to require maintenance. unless somebody hits it or there's an extreme weather event. And, you know, if we get an ice storm and the connector isn't correctly holstered or protected, you know, that can affect things. But there's no, you know, every year replace this, or every 2 years replace that piece. Once they're installed, they typically last for the duration of their lifespan, which is 8 to 10 years. I have EV chargers installed, some of the original Clipper Creeks and some of the original Flow Smart 2s that have been around since 2009, 2010, and they're still kicking around without any issues.
One person was concerned about end-of-life EV batteries ending up in landfills, and they were wondering what's being done about recycling end-of-life batteries and where we're at with that.
So whoever that person is, I want to personally tip my hat to them. I would not be working in the environmental. So I left pure renewable energy, which is where my wife still works, to move into electric vehicles, because I think this is the greatest opportunity we have to fundamentally decarbonize our economy and decarbonize our country, which is very car-centric and very transportation-centric. So first off, we have to understand what's going to happen to electric vehicle batteries. And let's talk first about what's going to happen to an EV battery and what its lifespan actually is. It is not done at the end of its lifespan in a car. Cars operate at between 400 and 800 volts tension. Typically a car is about 400. Some of the newer Teslas and Porsches, the new Volkswagens, they're at 800 volts. So the actual tension inside the battery, the voltage will start to drop over time, typically 12 to 15 years. At the end of 15 years, that battery can no longer be used inside a car. But the battery still has exceptionally long life, especially new battery chemistries that are known as NMC, or nickel, manganese, cobalt. What those batteries will then be used for is stationary battery storage. They'll be taken out of cars, stacked into large piles, and they're going to be utilized to store solar and wind energy and deploy them during peaks. This is already happening in places that have tons of electric vehicles. Norway, Sweden. I'm a Swede and follow Swedish news pretty consistently. Denmark, I think, has one of the largest former EV battery systems being stuffed into solar generation systems and offshore wind especially, and they'll deploy it into buildings. So an electric vehicle battery will last another 15 years on top of its 15 doing that. At the end of those 30 years, they're going to get recycled. There will be zero waste from electric vehicle batteries. And the reason is because, not due to environmental consciousness, unfortunately, but it's the accountants running things. Those minerals inside those batteries are worth an absolute boatload. So already in Canada, where there's batteries now being used in solar and whatever, there's partnerships being put together. Nissan most recently signed one, and Kia most recently signed one with Quebec, Ontario-based company LightenCo, and Giraldin, the electric school bus manufacturer, our competitor, just signed one as well with LightenCo. Lion does its own, so we have our own system. There are recyclers all over the place, and ostensibly what they do is they take the battery in a safe environment, they strip it, they remove the lithium, which is a polymer type gel that sits on top of the battery, and then they extract the cathode and the halide cells, which are typically metals, and then solid state systems, and you recycle the whole component. I would not be worried about electric vehicle batteries ever going to landfills. Where my worry really is what we're going to do with all the lead acid batteries that are in gas-powered cars. I have real fears about what we're going to do with that, because it's been 100 years of gas-powered cars, and we have yet to come up with a smart solution to recycle them yet. There's lead acid batteries everywhere, in every landfill, and I don't know what we're going to do about that yet. But before I end, Sandy, yes, chargers can be housed underneath shelters to protect them from the elements. It's only extreme weather events that will damage a charger. If you take a look at, say, the Flow Smart 2, which is made in Canada, by the way, it's a Canadian company, made in Shawinigan, Quebec. Nothing to do there, but a great EV place. Their built out of pure aluminum and pure metal. Rio Tinto Alcan, the aluminum company, also Canadian, has their name emblazoned across the charger, and they're rated NEMA 3. They're good to negative 45 centigrade. I personally have a flow charger in my garage. I used to have it on the outside of my house in Ottawa. I wasn't actually in Ottawa. I was in the village of Cheney, which is in Clarence Rockland along Russell Road, in what I believe the technical term is middle of nowhere. And it was on the outside of my garage facing a farmer's field, and it had snow buildup on it and everything. Like, a flow charger cannot be destroyed. Otherwise mine would have been destroyed. They're incredible machines. But if you have issues around plowing, or you have accessibility issues, and you do want to protect individuals from having to wade through snow, you absolutely can put them underneath shelters. Great example is the Hydro Ottawa headquarters on Hunt Club Road. They have 2 publicly available EV chargers underneath a shelter that has solar panels on it, actually. And part of your car is sheltered as well, so you can get out in the rain and you're still dry if you're in desperate need of a charge on Hunt Club.
Great, thank you. One person was wondering, what is the area required around an EV charging station?
Nothing. So Ontario is pretty loosey-goosey with this. If the site is going to be declared an EV charging only site, and it is a non-wall mounted charger, that is, it's sitting on a pedestal right at curbside, the code will typically require 2 concrete bollards, which are like posts, be installed so that no one can run it over, and the post will be and the spot will be painted green. If they are mounted on a wall, no such requirement exists. However, it is standardized best practice to paint the space green and to mount a sign that says EV charging only, not EV parking only, EV charging. And the requirement for that is, if you ever wish to ticket people who are hogging the spot and preventing individuals from charging, which is what gives autonomy and life to vehicles, to allow them to have 0 carbon emissions when they drive, you're going to want to specify that this spot is reserved only for people in need of a charge.
The next question we have is, I think has partially been answered. It was about life expectancy, but the first part was about how future-proof are charging stations that we have these days.
Great question. 5 years ago, this answer would have been entirely different. So let's back it up and talk a little about the history of EV charging. In 2012, the Nissan Leaf launches alongside the G-Wiz in the UK, Australia, South Africa, and India. And they both run on the CHAdeMO system, invented by the French, invented by Peugeot, Renault, and Citroën. Stands for Charge de Move. Whatever, I'm Francophone, I don't even know why they named it that. The North American standard was called J1772, and the DC version was called SAE Combo, or CCS1. All 3 names are correct. CCS is what we typically call it, the Combined Charging Standard. And then Tesla comes out with their own proprietary standard. And in the last 2 years, both Tesla and the CHAdeMO system have basically gone the way of the dodo. And I say that because electric vehicles, we need to start thinking of as more than cars. Eventually, we're going to live in urban areas in a carless future. That's just environmentalism will dictate that new urban planning is very much focused on bikes and active transportation, and that's just the way it's going. So let's take a look at what non-car vehicles are doing. Ferries are going to the CCS1 standard. Transit buses, shuttle buses, school buses, bulldozers, Zambonis, off-road vehicles, ATVs, low-speed vehicles, snowmobiles, they're all going on the J1772 standard, which is the North American standard. So how future-proof is the J1772 standard? Well, it's now the standard in North America. Tesla sells you an adapter when you buy a Tesla for the J1772 standard. So does the Nissan Leaf. You buy a Leaf, it's now on that standard. You don't even get the CHAdeMO versions anymore. Same thing with the Prius Plus. It all is moving towards that North American standard. So in terms of future-proofing, that standard is going to go very far, very, very far. And then in terms of lifespan, these chargers typically, if you buy a good one, and I don't sell junk, you can always buy a cheaper charger. You can even call me and I will tell you what chargers are on the market that are cheaper than the ones I sell. There are about 12 brands that you could buy tomorrow. I represent 7 of them. There are 3 now, one of them did go out of business, that will be sold cheaper than mine. And I will be there waiting for you when it breaks in 6 months. The lifespan, if you're getting anything less than 10 years out of your charger, you've been ripped off. And I believe in electric mobility. I believe in reducing greenhouse gases. I think this should be an investment that is made once. I don't think this is an investment that we should be making every 2 years. This shouldn't be a Samsung phone. This should be something, this should be a Nokia, 680 that still works after 22 years.
Great, thank you. One person was wondering if the charging station connects to the church's own electrical panel.
Yes. So typically how that will work is if you want to own it and you want to install it, you'll have to connect it to your electrical system. So it'll connect to the church's system. There are a few cases where that is different. Is anybody here from the Catholic Diocese of Ottawa? So any residential parsonage that has its own electrical meter for the residential common portion versus the actual church itself, you're going to have to make a decision. Is this a residential charger or is this commercial? If it is commercial and you want to derive revenue from it, it will have to be attached to the church. It cannot be attached to the residential component unless it's registered in the resident's name or in the owner of the house. So if it's still owned by the diocese, you can still attach it to that. But it's going to have to be on an electrical panel that you own. For example, you can't tie it to a street light and have the city of Ottawa pay for it and then expect to derive revenue from it. Well, you can do that, but the city of Ottawa will definitely have words. Yeah.
And then one is about cost-benefit analyses and best management practices for installing chargers. So they're wondering if you've had any cost-benefit analyses with communities regarding the community benefit and the environmental benefit of a charger.
Absolutely. So I've studied at a lot of universities. My favorite to reference is from my alma mater, and I was in no way, shape, or form involved in this because I am not smart enough. The University of Toronto has probably the greatest report on electric vehicles that was published last year out of the Department of Engineering in conjunction with the Department of Health. And they did a cost-benefit analysis on like for like, replacing gas cars with electric cars and focusing on the charging analysis behind it. And they focused on the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area only. There are 4 subsequent studies, Montreal, Quebec City, Vancouver, as well as Halifax and environs that have been done since then. But the University of Toronto is the most comprehensive, and I recommend it to anybody who wants to read it. I'll post it into the chat later. If all cars in Toronto, personal transportation vehicles, were electrified tomorrow, annually, we would save over 100 lives a year through a reduction of particulate matter, CH4, which is methane, CH2, natural gases, as well as diesel and carbon particulate matter inhalation. We would reduce the amount of sound that is causing ambient pollution inside our cities. 100 lives would be saved and $2.7 billion in social welfare would not need to be spent. Most acutely, on treating infants who develop respiratory issues in high density areas that have tons of apartment buildings and are on major thoroughfares that bring in a lot of cars. In Ottawa, that is Herongate, which has Walkley Road, Bank Street, and Heron, and a whole ton of low-income high-rise sitting in the middle of it that's surrounded by pollution from cars. In Gatineau, that is anybody who lives along Maloney West. This is the type of benefit that we're bringing in terms of electric vehicle charging. The McGill and Université de Montréal study focusing on Montreal is probably the best example of what is going to happen to the electricity grid. Ontario right now sells power at a loss overnight to the United States of America. They just dump power on whoever will take it because we typically generate from nuclear. So our base load during the afternoon is not enough. We have to generate, and that adds natural gas to our grid. It makes it very carbon intensive during the afternoon. And then we sell our carbon-free electricity at a loss overnight. But if we're charging electric vehicles overnight, suddenly we no longer have to sell power at a loss. And we can start to recuperate that money during the night, which will lower power prices during the day. So you want cheaper power, cleaner air, fewer sick kids, and you want to spend less money on healthcare? EVs are the way to go. The University of Toronto study also talks about buses, transportation, and the way to electrify everything. It also has a lot to say about electric bicycles versus manual bicycles. And I'll make sure everybody gets that one in the chat right here. But yeah, the cost benefit analysis has come in from a wide variety of studies all across Canada, and they all say the same thing. But before I end, Sandy, dual port chargers, the ability to charge two vehicles at once, typically cost the same as buying two good electric vehicle chargers themselves. It is typically my recommendation to buy two electric vehicle chargers rather than one dual port. They're roughly as cost effective, and they typically last longer. A dual port system, if it breaks, can no longer charge two vehicles. Whereas if you have two electric vehicle chargers that cost the exact same thing and one breaks, you still have the ability to earn revenue and you can still charge a vehicle. ChargePoint is the only company that makes a decent dual port charger. They cost about $9,000–$10,000 each, which can more than cover the price of two electric vehicle chargers from Flow, Blink, or even ChargePoint. And David Wilson, are there chargers that have commerce grade metering where they could be connected to the streetlights and be billed without the installation of a meter? Yes, there are very few municipalities who do that. And the reason is because A, you as the owner of the charger don't own the street light. B, streetlights are typically covered under a wide variety of provincial legislation that measure things like lumens as well as safety issues. And C, no municipality in Canada has agreed to it without having a revenue sharing agreement without the charger owner. One example of that is the City of Montreal that has piloted it and has said no to it and has gone with putting the chargers on their own individual pedestals. Is it possible? Yes. Do I recommend it? Absolutely not, especially not for a faith-based community group. I would very much recommend you put it on your own building and that you wall mount it.
I think the final question that I have in advance was, what network has the most chargers available in Ottawa, Ontario, and Canada, and what should be considered when selecting a network?
So in Canada, there are two major networks. Everybody has their own, but just because of the size of the Quebec marketplace and its proximity to Ottawa, the electric circuit and the Flow network dominate. 90% of users in Ontario, in the Ottawa region will have a Flow card. Is it the dominant network Canada-wide? Well, truthfully, it depends. Electric vehicles in Canada, if you live in Ottawa, you typically drive a lot into Gatineau or you drive a lot into Montreal, just because of the commuting patterns in the region. And most people in Ottawa are on one of those two networks. There are about 112,000 users on the electric circuit and the flow network, which represent around 60% of all Canadian electric vehicles. And Flow has a coast-to-coast network. They're quite large in Alberta, they're quite large in Vancouver, but they are not the largest out there. Canada-wide, the question starts to get a bit different. There are regional networks in Alberta, Manitoba, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia. But everyone needs to keep in mind the vast majority of Canadian electric vehicles exist between Ottawa-Gatineau and Quebec City. We're talking like 65, 70% of all EVs exist in that corridor. The flow and the electric circuit network are probably the largest. That does not mean you can't install Blink or ChargePoint. And the reason I say that is because most EV companies believe in the electric revolution themselves. They believe in reducing greenhouse gases, and all of them are interoperable with each other. All of them. I have a Flow card and a Flow card only. I can charge up on a ChargePoint charger, no problem. And I do, routinely. There are ChargePoint chargers at Hydro Ottawa. Hydro Ottawa has a ChargePoint system. I tap my Flow card on it, and it works for me because the networks are interoperable. And Sandy's asking, why would an EV driver use a level 2 charger in a faith-based community in the suburbs instead of a DC fast charger? And a couple of questions. A DC fast charger is typically only ever utilized on a highway for a couple of reasons. If I'm going shopping, for example, am I going shopping for 10 minutes? Or am I going shopping? Well, I suppose it depends on who it is, but I will fully admit, I live in a carbon neutral home and I still have a guilty pleasure, and that is I like shopping. If I go to a shopping mall, I'm not going for 10 minutes, which a DC fast charger is what you're going to use to give yourself 10-minute charge to get home. About 70% of all charging does occur at home. A faith-based community, depending on where it's located, can offer charging to individuals who are coming for Sunday service, or who are coming to worship, or who are coming to mass, or who are coming for, whatever the ritual is called at that particular community. They can also offer it as a means to an end, depending on where it's located. I'm thinking about in Montreal, this is quite common, but it's also quite common in Quebec City, where faith-based community organizations that own churches in centralized locations or to specific communities typically offer electric vehicle charging because it was subsidized and because they can now offer it as a common good thing to do that can attract people to a specific service. For example, one of the Catholic churches that I was working with in a city, a very large municipality north of Montreal, on Tuesdays and Thursdays hosts Boy Scout and Girl Scouts groups, hosts Army Cadets on Wednesdays, and on Fridays hosts a wide variety of marriage counseling services. And in each of those demographics, there are parents and there are other individuals that have a need to charge their electric vehicle. They get a charge 5 to 7 times a week on that system. They also exist in the city core. And what I say by city core, they exist near a shopping center, they exist near a pharmaprix, or what's pharmaprix in English? A Shoppers Drug Mart. And I spent way too long in Vanier. And they exist near a corner store as well. So individuals who are going into any of those can stop by and charge. And even a 20-minute charge on a level 2 charger will give you about 3.5 kilowatt hours, which for me is 10% of a charge, which is around 20 kilometers, which is enough for me to get home. A DC fast charger, I would personally never, ever use if I didn't have to. They're taxing, they cost a lot, I mean, relatively. If a level 2 charger is $1 an hour, a DC fast charger is typically $15 to $19 an hour, depending on where you are. And sure, it'll charge you up in an hour, but I don't feel like paying $6 for a full tank. Again, fully aware of what gas prices are right now. So it depends on who your market demographics are and where you're based. Again, if you're a church in Carp, you know, your needs are going to be very different from somebody who's based in, you know, Orleans on, you know, Plantagenet Boulevard or something.
We had another question about if you could go over the subsidies from the government in a little bit more detail and what that can get you in terms of EV chargers for, say, a faith community.
Absolutely. So the government is currently right now offering 50%, big coupon, 50% off the purchase and installation of electric vehicle charging. For most people, that will be 50% off a level 2 charger. Installation is typically, so assume you have a 400 amp panel in a church, 200 amps, whatever, and you have space. I require 40 amps free standard. I can do it on 30. I prefer not to. So you've got a panel, you got 40 amps free. You want to put in an EV charger. Great. Assuming that panel is free and it's a relatively short run to the outside where I only have to drill through one wall, you know, and I'm not freezing because I typically charge extra for that. It's about $1,500 to install. Thumb up in the air. And then if you want a high quality electric vehicle charger that accepts credit card, not just a network, you know, it's $4,000. So $6,000 off the top, and somebody pays $3,000 for it, and it takes you standardized suburban church, takes you 5 years to pay the whole thing off, at which point it starts becoming gravy for you. That's really what the subsidy is offering. The reason the subsidy is being offered now is because we in Canada have a chicken and egg scenario. Quebec overcame this, by the way. Quebec figured it out. They dumped a ton of money, at a loss, by the way, into the electric circuit in 2012. And everyone said, what a waste of time, what a waste of money. But there were EV chargers everywhere. People noticed them and said, I can buy an electric car. If I want to go to Quebec City, I'm never going to run out of a charge because every 50 kilometers there's a fast charger, and the range is 200, so I can go wherever I need to. Sorry, it was bath time just finished for my youngest. We got snow, and I have Elsa and Anna in my household today. Quebec overcame that, put the chargers in first, and electric vehicle adoption shot up. They also have subsidies on the vehicles, which the federal government is now offering as well. And they recently, I don't want to call it won, but they recently achieved government status during the most recent election. And those subsidies will continue into the future. So by putting a charging network in place, we encourage adoption. We only need to look at Quebec. Quebec is 55% of all EVs on the road. It's 23% of the population. It's crazy, crazy adoption. The Quebec marketplace doubles every 9 months. Like it's wild. It's home to all the electric vehicle industry. So and it was led by community organizations. Desjardins, Saint-Hubert, the chicken restaurant is. You can always find a level 2 EV charger in a Saint-Hubert. They did it at a loss, but they did it as part of their greening initiative. Desjardins did it at a loss, which is crazy that a bank that my bank in particular would take on such a financial risk on that. But they did it understanding that there were government subsidies, that it was the right thing to do, and that this is the decision that they were going to undertake. So now that's on the rest of Canada's shoulders. So, yeah. Do we offer payment plans? It depends on number of chargers and I mean, sure, nothing is off the table. I've financed deals before, but it's usually for like 1,000 EV chargers. But yeah, I wouldn't rule anything off the table. That's something that LightenCo and Lion can take away and we can discuss. Yeah. No problem, Sandy.
One question, just more as like, I guess, a GSS idea. You were speaking about group applications or group kind of group purchases of a number of faith communities to get kind of bulk discounts. What sort of number of chargers would you need to get some sort of group bulk discount?
That's something that LightenCo, so my number is, that's something that LightenCo and Lion would have to walk away on and really think about. It would depend on where they are, what we're doing, what the job is going to look like, whether or not it's exclusive to us. Nothing would be off the table, since this is something, this is an organization that we'd want to work with, because we think that you guys are in this for the right reasons, just like us, and we want to ensure that we can put together a holistic, sustainable solution that advances, like tangible solutions against climate change. In terms of what total discount that would be on number of chargers, we'd have to sit down and work at that at in a more, like in a less Q&A, more formal business setting. But that's something Steve and I could absolutely talk about.
Thank you. Does anyone have any additional questions? I believe that Christopher was great at answering the questions in the chat as they came up. But if anyone has any additional questions, you can either put them in the chat or if you'd like to unmute and ask those. Sandy has, how long does an installation take?
Again, ideal situation, which is the ideal situation is that church on Innis Road in Orleans, that one right, like almost to the metro. It's like a Baptist or Lutheran church. It's got the transmission lines going right overhead. That's my ideal. It's my ideal because I guarantee you they have power. Assuming their panel is like right beside the door, hour and a half. Like I'm going to drill a hole through the wall. I'm going to run 2 cables through it, an L1 and an L2 in copper. I'm going to run it into the charger, seal it off, put it in conduit, nail it, well, drill it into the wall. I'm not going to take a hammer to it. And like 2 hours and I'm done. That's my ideal. Worst case scenario, because I want to give everybody the full range here. I started a project. I started a project in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu, Quebec, September 9th, which was, I believe, a Saturday. One second. Sorry, Thursday, September 9th. And I finished it on the 24th, which took more than 2 weeks to put in 7 chargers because I had to put in a new hydro pole and I had to do a whole ton of other stuff. Like these are all DC fast chargers. It depends on what you're doing. Level 2 charger shouldn't be any more than 2 hours each, unless it's complicated or I need to put in a new panel. Not long.
Thanks. I figured I should show my face since I keep asking all these questions. I originally had it off because my daughter was here, but basically, I think I should just come right out and say this. I'm the guy with the idea at the church, and I'm trying to sell it to the property committee.
Yep.
And I just they have some very good reasons. They've come up with some good reasons why they're hesitant to, and I'm just looking for the best. You've given me a lot of good selling points, but if you have any more, I'd be all ears.
I mean, it's the right thing to do. It'll eventually pay for itself. By 2035, you won't be allowed to buy gas cars. So do you want to offer this? Yes or no? I mean, there's also, I mean, I don't know what their particular criticisms are, but I'm always happy to take this offline. You can find me on LinkedIn. I talk about this all the time. This is what I do, and I fundamentally believe in it. This is not just a job for me. Like, I mean, I'm sure I've mentioned my wife works in renewable energy. Like, this is sort of our house, right? This is what we do. This is what we talk about. There's plenty of information out there. Flow is a Canadian company that They have a blog on their website. They talk about this all the time. I'm a partner of Flow. I represent them. I work with them on a daily basis. Their Ottawa sales guy's name's Alex. I think he's number 8 or 9 in my phone. You know, they talk about this as well, and they get into really specific business cases because their level 2 charging is their bread and butter. It's what they're best at. It's the model I have in my home, by the way. They're probably a great resource to look at as well. There are other organizations that you can look at that have done this as well. One of the ones I recommend is taking a look at Blink. Blink Charging, they're an American charger manufacturer. They are expensive, but they have a blog run by a guy named Ted Manser, who is does a lot of work with US faith-based communities, specifically like, how do you electrify a food bank to make a food bank carbon neutral, right? So he's got business cases on that kind of stuff. And I can provide those resources for you in English or French, no problem.
Thank you very much.
Hey man, no worries. That's what I do.
Maybe I'll send their concerns your way if I get your contact information.
Yeah, I'll put my my email into the chat, assuming I can spell my name right. Yeah.
We'll also be able to, I'll send an email out, I guess, with some synopsis information, and I'll be sure to include Christopher's contact information in that, as well as Steve, yours. I'll put that in there. And
yeah,
we'll
Steve is my eyes and ears on the ground in Ottawa. We have a partnership. I've known Steve for a while. I'm hesitant to date myself here, but you know, LightenCo is. Sorry, am I muted?
Sorry, that was my fault.
So I've known Steve for a long time, and LightenCo has the exact same belief system that we do. They're founded on energy efficiency. They're founded on a fight against climate change, except their bread and butter is general electricity, lighting, and building efficiency. And that pairs up really nicely with electric vehicle charging. So our partnership is hand in hand, right? You know, Steve is our eyes and ears on the ground in Ottawa. If you want someone to come take a look at your site, I'm only in Ottawa once a month. But you know, if you require a visit onto your site, I'll do my best to schedule it in the next. I'm next there in 2 weeks, just beginning of December. I'm happy to come and take a look at stuff. I'm happy to come offer advice. But LightenCo is really the eyes and ears. If you want a quote, if you want an assessment, you know, I'll be providing the charger, and LightenCo will typically do the install, and then we work together on the assessment portion, bringing, you know, Lion's expertise and LightenCo's know-how. That's what we're here for, right? And we're happy to do this.
In terms of assessment, does that come, I think you mentioned that there's a fee for an assessment, or is that
correct?
Yeah,
correct.
What is the sort of fee for that?
Typically for commercial premises, we charge $3,000 for an assessment, and that's typically done on a per site basis. If you're only going to be ever installing one electric vehicle charger, I don't recommend the assessment. We just simply quote that out for an install plus the charger.
I'm happy to expand on that a little bit too. So we do have a couple appointments coming up. And if you're just looking to install 1 or 2 level 2 chargers on site, then for us to come out and look at the panel, look at the load, look at the capability that you have there electrically to put in a couple chargers, no problem. We'll do that, you know, at no cost. What Christopher's talking about is when we do a pretty detailed assessment that looks at the whole kind of future path. We often do it more for condos. So if they're looking at how do we get all of our 85 parking spots with EV chargers over the next 15 years to accommodate everybody, bringing one in, you know, what are some of the rules and regulations we might want to set out? What are some brand options? You don't want to have like, you know, every different spot having a different charging station, one Blink, one Flow, one charge point. You want to make it consistent. For a church, it might not be as necessary, but the one benefit is that you do get 50% of the cost of the assessment covered back. And what I can do is I can probably get with Christopher to send off to everybody kind of a sample of what that assessment would entail. And if it's something that's of use to you know, your organization, then absolutely you could look at it. If not, and you just want to put a charger or two up, no problem. That's fine either way. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. I'll have to send Christopher a thank you email. I hope that his daughter is all right. But thank you as well, everyone who came out. We're really excited for kind of this opportunity and the amount of interest we've had from faith communities. It's definitely something we want to roll with, and we want to get you guys set up with these. So if you have any additional questions, I will be sending out a follow-up email with Steve's contact information, with Christopher's. And if you have any questions for our side of things on faith community aspects, feel free to reach out to us with that. And I'll be sending out the recording of this session so that you can refer back to it. And if you want to share that with any of your property committees or those sorts of things, I know that these sorts of Q&As are really helpful for putting your motion forward and that sort of thing.